Thank you so much for being here. My name is Tim Debus. I can say today that there is truly an awakening that's taking place around the world. There's clarity that's forming about reusable packaging and the reuse of products that we produce, taking the resources and the capital and making sure that we can leverage what we've made over and over again and put it into a continuous function of utility for reusable packaging that's driving value, in our case, in the supply chain. And I really sense this awakening that's taking place in the markets, public policy, and even with consumers that I've not seen before, even just a few years ago, that we've not at the level of where we are today as far as interest and awareness about the reuse of products that we produce. And it's an exciting time. It's kind of a dawn of an era in the sense of having this acknowledgement that reuse has a role, a critical role, in how we manage the products that we produce, in our case, particularly in packaging. And this goes back to 50 years ago, the old adage of reduce, reuse, recycle, and somehow we shifted that order over the last 50 years and focused a lot more on recycling than we have on the source reduction of reduce and reuse. This followed up in 1990 with the Pollution Prevention Act when the US EPA made it as national strategy of this waste hierarchy pyramid in which source reduction and reuse is seen as the most preferred activity associated with the management of materials. And it even furthered to the 2010, I will say, the foundation of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, in which they started tying how source reduction can contribute to economic growth. And it really has become, from the Ellen MacArthur's Foundation, I believe, has been central to mainstreaming the circular economy, which is a concept that goes back, decades before. But they were able to creatively craft how circular economy really is necessary in today's world of driving economic gain, driving economic growth, decoupled from resource consumption. And it's that detachment that is so critical in the circular economy, that you can grow successfully without being a constant consumer of natural resources. And I think taken together, we can see the evolution, I think, of the thinking behind source reduction over the generations, but now how it's tied to the economy is very important. It's reusable packaging, in the case of reuse, is much more than just, say, a sustainability for the environment play. It's about economic growth. And that's been a significant change over the years in understanding how reuse can drive innovation, how it can drive efficiencies, and ultimately lead to that growth that's not a constant reliance on the steady stream of raw materials for, say, manufacturing. You can look at this statistic in two ways, right? That as captured by the Circularity Report, the global economy is just 7.2% circular. It's actually down from 9.1 over the last couple years. So even as circularity has become more mainstream, their evidence shows that it's actually decreasing. We're still consuming resources at an unsustainable pace, and we're not reusing or recycling as many of these materials that we need to in order to be more circular. And so we've got some work to do here. Now you can look at it saying, gosh, this is terrible. How come we can't do any better a job? But you can also look at it saying, look at the opportunity we have, right? Look how much room we have to be able to redesign systems in which we're practicing the highest level of circularity of using the products that we produce over and over again, and the amount of growth that we have in innovation, testing new systems and design to be able to solve some of the greatest problems that we have today. Well, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation continues to lead in their global commitment, particularly in regards to plastics, in their new plastics economy, but even more recently in their report saying that reuse is a crucial part of what this global commitment is all about achieving the goals, and that we need strong public policy to be able to help set up these circular infrastructures. And so there's a lot more that's coming to the table today that's driving the awareness and understanding and recognition or have I said the awakening of reuse that is really generating a lot of excitement, but also opportunity as well. And we're seeing this translate through the market. Now, these are headlines that I picked up over the last couple months. So it's new activity of major consumer product brand companies, retailers involved in trialing reuse and refill programs. And it's great to see this energy that's forming as far as the testing of reuse in the marketplace and consumer awareness about reuse operations. These are not overnight programs. There will be trial and error, but the idea is that they're starting to be a little more mainstream into thinking that not only can and should we do this, but we can capitalize on it, that there's opportunity here. And so we're seeing this now, significant awareness that's taking place about the need for reuse in the marketplace. But I think if I wanted to visualize where we are, if you take the roller coaster scenario, we're right at the tip. We still got some room to grow. Again, this is not an overnight. As you saw, it took 50 years, I think, to recognize that reuse has a special place. So it's going to take some time. If there was a picture where the cart is a little bit lower, I probably would have selected that one. We got a little more uphill. However, there's a terrific downhill ride once we get on the other side, and it's going to have loops and it turns and curves, and it's going to be wild at times because we're still figuring out reuse, especially with the consumer products and the engagement of reuse and refill with consumers. And it's going to be quite crazy once we get onto the other side, but it's opportunity, an opportunity that we can look at the supply chain reusable packaging and how that can be leveraged to support reuse throughout all the different applications and markets that are ripe for source reduction. What I would submit today, though, is that there are 4 megatrends, what I highlighted as the title of my session, that's really going to help accelerate down. And accelerate down in terms of having the wind behind us in supporting the stand-up of reusable packaging solutions in the marketplace. And I want to touch on each of these trends that I believe are going to be instrumental in driving the promise of reusable packaging around the world. But you have to look at these trends together, in a sense. Each one of them individually is very powerful about tilting the dynamics of reusable packaging in the market, about providing the incentives and the encouragement to explore reuse. But taken together, it really reaches levels unseen and untapped as far as value that can be created associated with reuse systems in the marketplace. Well, last year, MHI ran a survey and it captured what they found to be the significant trends in the supply chain. You've got agility associated with being nimble to adapt to disruptions and changes in operations in the marketplace. Certainly rising costs, inflation that's taking place in terms of how we're procuring and utilizing materials. The workforce, challenges we have as far as labor constraints that are out in the market. Certainly sustainability is top of mind of how we can practice and also report of how we're being more environmentally and social beneficial to our operations and our customers. And certainly visibility and transparency. So these are the major trends that they were able to pull from their significant survey. I think over 1,600 responses from corporations, basically saying this is the trends today. And I would say that each one of the 4 megatrends I'm going to talk about are combined in there, and you'll see them woven within the trends that are identified in the supply chain. So first, think technology. Technology, in my sense here, is about really asset management. It's about tracking and tracing. It's about having visibility of your business, in this case, of your supply chain and the distribution of your goods from all the way from start to finish. And the Boston Consulting Group identified 3, say, buckets within the supply chain of the future. And digital economy and artificial intelligence is certainly one of them. And that's where I see reusable packaging as a tremendous opportunity to digitize the economy, digitize the supply chain. The products that we produce in reusable packaging, they're highly durable, which means you can design and have some freedoms in design to be able to take on technology, in mold embedding of, say, RFID chips and other devices that are equipped within a pallet, a tote, a bin that's able to broadcast location. You know, here I am, you look at me in the map, and I'm moving down the highway, have that level of visibility. It could also temperature and shock and vibration for quality control, and have that record keeping all the way through where you have complete visibility of where your product is and what condition it is and the quality control in which it's under. That's capable when you have smart and connected reusable packaging products that are lasting for years, multiple uses, on and on for record keeping. It's very exciting. And think about the massive amounts of pallets and totes and bins out there. Well, artificial intelligence is going to allow for the understanding and interpretation of all of that big data into things like predictive analyses, inventory management, more quicker response times to adjust to disruptions in the marketplace. It's truly going to be breakthrough levels of a value proposition associated with smart and connected reusable packaging. That leads to resilience, right? It's the whole agility of your operations, is when you know where your products are, you know where they're going, you know when they're going to arrive, you know what conditions they're under. You have all these points that you can layer on to make quick decisions to adjust and use artificial intelligence to be able to take massive amounts of data into forecasting. So it really is going to be a very powerful set of tools to be able to help drive value and performance in a supply chain that needs to be digital. And of course, leading to more sustainable operations as well, more efficiencies, which we'll talk about in a moment. Automation is the second. Robots in particular. Now, automated environments are continuing to occur. They're really cool. Now we're seeing more of the structure of robots. This is coming. And I think it was Elon Musk about 2 weeks ago at a conference in Saudi Arabia predicted that by 2040, there will be more robots than humans. He was predicting 10 billion by 2040. Okay. What happens if he's half right? You know, that he's even close. And the prediction is very interesting to think that in just 16 years, we're going to have that. But the idea is that robots are going to be very effective in terms of how we make, produce, distribute products. And to have reusable packaging as the mechanism in which robots interact in carrying, you have the precision, you have the durability, you've got the replication that can continue. And that's where I think reusable packaging in the facilities and warehouses where this automation is taking place is going to be so valuable in terms of withstanding the rigors of that automation, providing consistency and preciseness within the movement of goods. And then taking it even a step further about how that automation can even go outside of, say, a facility downstream to customers. The automation is going to be really important because, as you'll see on the graphic here, the workforce is declining in terms of number of participants. The economy is expected to shrink because the labor workforce is not able to keep up with the demand in jobs. And we know this. The data, the census data knows about population changes and baby boomers moving on and what's happening in terms of people and their interest in work, in their jobs, in their work, in their career, in their balance of lifestyles. Whatever the changes are, the fact is that automation is going to be able to assist with that and able to meet the growth demands while also being able to be more efficient in many capacities with operations. And I think reusable packaging with technology fits really well within that ecosystem of operations. Public policy is the third of this megatrend that will be that support structure, I believe, for reuse. That's going to really encourage, if not incentivize, companies to examine source reduction in their packaging. The United Nations plastics treaty that's being negotiated with the last negotiation session later this month in Korea is looking at instrumenting greater commitments around the world in recycling practices, in source reduction, and certainly reuse as well. In fact, just earlier last week, 10 U.S. states sent a letter to the Biden administration and the negotiators on the U.S. side saying, we need to be more aggressive in terms of having stipulations within a treaty that are going to really look and focus on source reduction, including reuse systems. That was one of the takeaways of trying to use mechanisms like a treaty to foster reuse. And in the United States, you've got several other mechanisms from policy that's going to be driving decision-making and incentivizing towards reuse. From the Save Our Seas Act, which is all about more marine and coastal areas, but they're using it for grants to the Environmental Protection Agency for recycling and reuse initiatives. From priorities around environmental justice, from the federal government saying, we're only going to procure materials that can be seen as sustainable, like have a certain minimum amount of recycling content before the federal government buys them, for example. The US EPA developing national strategies for the circular economy. The Department of Energy having a prize that basically of re-X before recycling. What are those activities that need to be supported before we even think about recycling? And let's see if we can fund and support those activities. And of course, extended producer responsibility, where 5 US states now have their own programs. And there ultimately needs to be, I think, a national strategy to be able to tie those interstates together so there can be better trade and commerce within the states associated with packaging. And the shifting of the burden of waste management from the taxpayer municipalities to those who are sending the waste in to begin with. And it's all of those taken together, including new regulations out of Europe, the packaging and packaging waste regulation. In India, we're really pushing ahead on circular economy and extended producer responsibility initiatives. These will be forces that, combined with the reckoning or the awakening of reuse from the economic opportunities, from the performance opportunities with technology, are really going to come together to help drive, I think, the growth of reusable packaging in the market. And finally, metrics being the fourth one, more on the sustainability side. You've heard the saying that you can't manage what you can't measure, or something along those lines there. In order to manage your operations, was generally the ability to draw raw materials, make a product, use the product, and dispose of the product. That generally is about 80% of your emissions associated with the carbon emissions, say from the United States, is that inventory, that associated with the product, for example. And so there's going to be a lot of need to be able to measure that in order to report progress, establish baselines, for example. And so when you have technology-enabled reusable packaging, you can easily measure by taking the data that a pallet, a crate, a container is telling you in terms of its impact on the environment. The miles in which it's traveling could quantify in transportation impacts, for example. And when you have these smart products in a digital economy, a digital supply chain, you're going to be able to access this data that's going to allow for more accurate and trusting data in terms of reporting of your performance in your operations. So when you look at technology and automation and the excitement associated with reusable packaging, you layer on public policy and corporations needing to address sustainability, social metrics, and environmental initiatives. It is a tremendous collection of forces, macro forces, that are, I think, ultimately going to be driving us and take that roller coaster ride down, in which there's a tremendous amount of benefits to reap as you're able to achieve economic growth, but then have all these other benefits associated with lower environmental footprints to your business operations, and then have that technology that has been untapped, unheralded in terms of its ability to help drive your competitive benefit in the marketplace. And so I'll summarize that maybe the words best to capture is the opportunity today is to future-proof your business, and future-proof it with reusable packaging systems that's going to allow you to take on this new layers of technology and automation to be able to catapult your business and your customers' product and their performance, and working collaboratively in your value chain about driving the economic performance and with those sustainability benefits that you're seeking. I think reuse is really that meeting up of that optimizing supply chain and the performance, along with that environmental stewardship and the social well-being as well. And when you have that center point, to me, a well-managed, a highly efficient reuse system is going to be able to drive that and future-proof your business. And it's those four mega trends that I think coming together that are really going to tell the story and ultimately drive that benefit associated with reusable packaging that we haven't yet to even see what those benefits are.